on his own presentation. The floor is yours, Sir Hilary.
Thank you, Earl. Thank you. Friends, colleagues, the protocol has been observed. Let us begin by historicizing, okay? I cannot speak without historicizing. There's always a beginning, and I wish to go there, and I go there quickly. Where are we now? And who are we? That's probably the most important question. Who are we? The historical evidence shows that we are in the 5th wave of the reparations movement. This is our time. We are standing on the shoulders of ancestors. This is our moment in time. The first wave we know was in the slavery period itself, when free black people would demand compensation and justice. They saw themselves as persons whose labor was stolen, and they wanted compensation for this stolen labor, which is based on a standard philosophy that every human being is entitled to benefit from the fruits of their labor. Why were black people not allowed to enjoy the fruits of their labor? It went to someone else owned that labor. So we had that first wave, and we have many cases of enslaved people becoming free and demanding compensation. Some got, most did not. Then the second wave was the emancipation decade, the 1820s and 30s, when the European parliaments, the British Parliament was debating, should we free these black people or not? And eventually they settled on the model that said we will compensate the slave owners, we know that, for the loss of their property. The government was taking their property away from them and therefore had to pay property compensation. It was the first time in the British Parliament that they actually admitted that black people were not human beings, because the compensation they were going to pay was property compensation. To take the taxpayers' money and hand it over, they needed a framework, and they said property compensation. The British government and the British people together, they owned 700,000 black people in the Caribbean, and therefore the value was 45 million pounds. That was our replacement value, or market value, so compensation. The enslaved people then, in the 1820s, were demanding, we too want compensation. So when the decision was taken to give the enslavers compensation, the enslaved said, we too want our compensation. They sent petitions to the British Parliament. What about us? We want compensation for the theft of our labor. What did the British government say? Be still and be quiet. The compensation you are getting is your freedom. We are freeing you, and that is your compensation. That is your reparations. So you take away someone's freedom and their right to their labor, and then those who took it from you then say, the compensation you are receiving is that we're giving you back your life. That is your compensation. Second phase. The third phase was the first generation of free black people in the Caribbean. 1840s, 1850s, 1860s, that generations of free black people are now demanding reparations and compensation right across the Caribbean. They're saying, we have not given up, we want reparatory justice. They were asking for land, they were asking for better wages, they wanted access to social services, schools, and so on, and organizations were springing up across the Caribbean calling for economic and social justice. Well, you know what happened in each case. 1865, Jamaica, they massacred the working people of Jamaica for appropriating unused land to plant crops. In the midst of a famine, to plant crops, the British government authorized the Jamaican government to remove them. And the army went in and massacred thousands of people. The leader, Port Bogle, they put a rope around his neck, and that was how the British government settled that phase. The same thing happened across the region. The newly emancipated all stood up for reparations. Then the fourth phase, of course, was the 1930s, when all of the Caribbean again rose up against colonization. And every island, one after the other, from St. Kitts, Belize, all the way down Barbados, Jamaica, then ultimately Jamaica, all demanded the end of colonization and the beginning of nationhood with reparatory justice. What did the British government do? Send in the troops. Never, never. The troops went in, they massacred the people of the Caribbean again. So we are now, once again, we are in the fifth phase. This is our time. So we have said, as Caribbean people, we're not going to let the struggle of our ancestors go to naught. We are going to take it up. This is our time, our duty, our responsibility to honor the legacy of all of our ancestors who demanded justice. This is our time. And so we rekindled the movement, and we said to ourselves, hopefully, this is going to be the last phase. So June, when we said that this 21st century is going to be the greatest political movement of the world, reparatory justice, we meant it, because we could feel it. All of the people of the world today who have been colonized, who have been enslaved, whose resources were plundered, whose people were stolen, all over the world, at this moment in history, everyone is saying, we want justice for what has happened to us. So this might have started in the Caribbean, Africa, America, the black people of this hemisphere, Africa, but now it is everywhere. It is now everywhere. And so at the United Nations 3 or 4 weeks ago, when the resolution was passed, people from all over the world, Asia, Europe, Africa, the Middle East, the Far East, all those people came together and said, we are standing with the African black people on this matter. China, Russia, Iran, all of those countries stood with us. This is the moment. This is it. So here we are now at the final stage where we believe that the case has been made. For 300 years, did we have a legal case to reparatory justice? The answer now is yes. The case has been made. There's nothing more to discuss about whether there's a case or not. The question now is implementation, demand. That's where we are now at this moment. That is why Africa and the CARICOM are now in league, providing global leadership for the next phase. I want to end on the point which June made about our women. When the Europeans designed a legal system called chattel slavery, they structured it, they conceptualized it, they designed it, they put it into law. At the center of that was that the black woman was the carrier of the seed of slavery. So the laws were designed that only a black woman, as you heard, could give birth to an enslaved child, because a child at birth, under the laws, took the status of the mother. At birth, the child took the status of the mother. So if the mother was white and the father was an enslaved man, and there are many cases, of course, we have in the records where enslaved men were having children with white women, those babies were born free because a white woman could not give birth to a black child. So all of those babies of mixed race, whose fathers were slaves, but whose mothers were white, those babies were born free. And we have them in the census, X number of so-called mulatto children, born free, mothers white, fathers black. So that became the model. The black women were seen as perfect property. Perfect property is how they were described. You could buy them as property. Now, as you know, when you buy property, it's your property. You can do with your property whatever you wish. You can buy it, lease it, mortgage it, sell it, use it as currency, pay taxes on it. Anything that property did, the black woman did. And on top of that, she gave you babies. By the time the baby was born and weaned and ready to work, the baby was born owning, it now was more valuable than the mother. So let's say you go down Castries and you buy a woman off the slave ship, you pay 30 pounds for her. The first child she gives you, by the time that child is 10 years old, that child is now worth 30 pounds. So the mother's value has been replaced. The next 2 or 3 children is pure profit. You have your return on your investment, and now you have profit from each child is more profit. So she is producing profit and producing money. On top of that, with your property, you have a right to derive social value. So, you have sexual access, it's your property. You could not rape a slave woman because in law she was property. You cannot rape property. There was legislation against raping animals. There were laws against the raping of sheep, goat, and cows, but there was no law against raping black women because they were property. And that was the value. So therefore, she gave you economic profit and she gave you social benefits. And the system of slavery was built upon the black woman. And once we understand that, we can understand why it went on so long and how it was structured generation by generation. So when you speak of intergenerational trauma, you're talking about a perfectly conceived system in the imagination of the slave owners. So we say to our women today, and June was in that class I taught at KFIL when the majority of my students were female. And one of them stood up and said, "Professor, you come in here every Tuesday and Thursday and you speak about slavery. But can you not see that the majority of your students are black women? Talk to us about our history. Talk to us about us. Don't talk about slavery in generic terms. There are gender dimensions to this. And black men and black women did not experience slavery in the same way. There were different experiences, fundamentally different experiences. We have to capture all of that. And so I said to the students, there's no material. I don't have any data to give you specific classes on the experiences of women. So I took a year off. I took a semester, and I went to the UK to spend a year in the archives. And what did I find? I found that there is more material in the archives about black women than about black men. There is more data in the archives about the experiences of black women as mothers, as wives, as workers, as reproducers than black men. So therefore, why was the history not written that way in the first place? Because we men, as scholars, as historians, as political scientists, we are the ones who wrote a history by writing women out of their history. So now we are writing history the right way for the first time. So I am saying to you that when you speak of the reparations movement, you speak not only of the phases of history, where we are, but you also speak about the liberation of women's history into the present. This document, finally, Mr. Chairman, I'm beyond my time. As we were sitting, planning our reparations meetings and our next activities and so on, we were hearing in the media that maybe the nuclear solution to the war in Iran is going to come before sooner or later. So we are here at this time in history and hearing that the possibility of dropping nuclear bombs on people to solve a political problem. We're also hearing powerful leaders talking about obliterating civilizations from the earth, obliterating the people, bombing them back to the Stone Age. That is a language that is surrounding us every day. As we breathe the air, we are hearing those sounds of the human species reaching a brink of possible annihilation. So the question is, what do we black people want? We don't only want justice for what has happened to us, to create a level playing field. We are concerned about the future of humanity, because we, the African people, we are the beginning of humanity. It is us, the African people. All the science has now shown life originated in Africa. So we own humanity. Humanity is our product. It has come out of us in our continent. So we have a responsibility for all of humanity, because this is the nature of our history. And so we said, reparations is the call for a new enlightenment, that the human species need to admit and accept of these crimes that were committed and imagine a better world for everyone. But before we get there, we have to deal with this, because the truth is that what they did to the African people continues to be a toxic culture in the whole world. The whole world is now obsessed with racism, obsessed with anti-black, and it's spreading like a virus all over the place. So we have to deal with the source of it, and the source of that is here. The reparatory justice, by which we say to the world, we have the gift, a gift to help humanity restore its center of gravity. This is the beginning. When we go through this, then we can enter into a new phase. And so when we launched this in Africa 3 weeks ago, we said our foreparents left Africa in chains. They left Africa in chains. But we have now returned to home with this. This is what we have returned home with: a manifesto for justice, freedom, and enlightenment. And so you see, at the end of it, you haven't broken us. You haven't broken us. You send us across the Atlantic in chains, but our minds were never in chain. Our brain was never in chain. And so we're back. And we're back without the chains, and with this and many other things. Thank you, Chairman.